They told us the jungle was dangerous after dark, but we thought they meant jaguars or smugglers. What I saw in that mist, I can't explain. It was a bird, the size of a man, and it had human eyes. Tension builds. Jungle sounds fade lower. That night changed everything, and we were not alone out there. In jungle, through the mist, I managed to see something. It looked like a bird, but it was enormous, unusually so. It was my size, and the worst part was its eyes, because they were definitely human. Good evening. Today we are going to venture into the jungle, into forests, into mountains. Today we are going to face the terrors that still inhabit those regions we can find if we dare to enter. And worse yet, that beyond encountering them, they might follow us back to this supposed safety of civilization, to the comfort of being at home. I'm going to ask you that during the next half hour you forget any problem, any worry. You will have enough with the terror that awaits you in the following story. Turn off the light and let yourself go. You are listening to Stories of the Night. My name is Alejandro Gomez, and I am going to tell you a story that happened in Ojo de Agua, a small town located on the border between Quintana Roo and Campeche in southeastern Mexico. To give you a better idea, we're talking about a region that connects with the Belize border and is not far from Guatemala. It's an area with dense jungle, difficult paths, and until recently very little contact with the outside world. In fact, electricity only arrived in the town about 10 years ago. Before that, when night fell, darkness was absolute. It was only broken by candles and kerosene lamps we used in the houses. Although now we have internet, and things have changed quite a bit, the town is still quiet and surrounded by high forest. Because of its particular location in the middle of 3 countries, Ojo de Agua has always been a point where invisible paths crossed. It was normal, although it may seem incredible, to find completely unknown people in the middle of the jungle, in places where one would think no one should be. This story is about my Uncle Mario and his compadre Miguelon, 2 hunters from the town who one night came across something strange in the jungle, something that changed the way they saw the wild forever. In Ojo de Agua, although it was rare, from time to time hunters came across people who had no reason to be there, smugglers moving between Mexico and Belize, foreign explorers looking to loot Mayan ruins, Mennonites who had entered the jungle searching for lost animals, and even, although it wasn't much spoken of, military narcos patrolling without warning. These encounters didn't happen often. They were quite unlikely considering how immense the jungle is. But when they did, they could be extremely dangerous. Nights were exactly like that, with good moonlight, because it allowed them to see the path without needing to waste the flashlight batteries ahead of time. And once in position, it gave enough light to distinguish shapes in the darkness while waiting. The jungle has its own nighttime symphony, the song of insects, the occasional distant growl of some animal, the whisper of leaves in the breeze. When you spend enough time in the wild, you learn to identify each sound, to know what is normal and what is not. That night, everything seemed in order in the jungle, the usual tranquility. But after midnight, something changed. My uncle says that first there were sounds difficult to identify, like branches breaking in the distance, but with a strange pattern, different from the animals that usually pass through there. The sounds gradually increased, getting closer, confusing them. They weren't the footsteps of a deer or a tepezquintle, a type of wild rodent, nor of a jaguar. There was something in the rhythm that felt unsettling, but at the same time familiar. They were human footsteps. What my Uncle Mario and Miguelon never imagined was that that night, While trying to decipher those unsettling sounds, they would see something that would leave them marked forever. Although it was rare, it wasn't impossible to run into other hunters. But at that very specific spot, so far from the town, at that hour of the early morning, it was very, very unlikely. The jungle is immense, and finding someone in that precise place at that exact moment was almost like winning the lottery. At first, they thought maybe it was other hunters from the town who had the same idea, but as the sounds got closer, thanks to the clear light of the full moon, they were able to distinguish something that left them frozen in shock. It was a group of completely naked people moving through the vegetation. They didn't all come together, but rather a group of 3 spaced apart from each other. The strange thing is that, according to my Uncle Mario, 3 groups passed for a total of 9 people. However, Miguelon, when he tells this story, has always insisted that it was 4 groups, that is, 12 people. This difference has never been resolved, and it makes me wonder if they both really saw the same thing that night. Completely motionless at the tops of their trees, paralyzed by fear, by uncertainty, the groups of 3 people kept appearing at intervals as if circulating through there, always following the same route with the same hypnotic behavior. It was only after they were sure that the last group had moved far enough away, and after waiting an additional time out of caution, that my uncle finally dared to whistle softly, a signal to know if Miguel was okay. The answer came, a short, low whistle. Both were alive, but neither dared to come down. That night, they didn't fire a single shot. The hunt was over before it began, and even though they could no longer see anyone, neither my uncle nor Miguelon dared to descend from the trees in the darkness. They decided to wait until the first rays of sun, preferring to endure hours of discomfort than risk coming face to face with those people on the ground. When they finally returned to town, they went straight to the cantina. They needed a strong drink, and perhaps more importantly, they needed to talk about what they had seen. At first, people thought they were exaggerating or that they had been drinking during the hunt, but then an old man from the town named Don Julio approached their table. "I've seen them too," he said quietly. "Years ago, when I still used to go into the jungle, they're people who live in there." Don Julio told them that, according to him, it wasn't any known indigenous group. They were people with noticeably white skin, which made their presence in that region even stranger. His theory was that it could be some kind of cult or sect that had voluntarily isolated itself deep in the jungle. Others in the cantina began offering their own theories. Someone suggested they might be descendants of European settlers who had gotten lost or hidden in the jungle generations ago. At that time, Yari was already beginning his path as a Jaivana, or more commonly known as a shaman. During his childhood and adolescence, he dedicated himself to learning the art of healing, illnesses, curses, and spiritual evils. But everything changed when he was 24 years old, when his father died, very young at 45. And it was said to be because of a curse. That loss was a devastating blow. Yari fell into an unhealthy obsession with curing everything. His search to understand death led him down a dark path. Please keep in mind that what I'm about to say happened almost a century and a half ago. It began with animal sacrifices, and later he went on to perform human sacrifices in secret. The only person who knew what he was doing was his sister, but the fear of his power kept her silent. It didn't take long for Yari to have 3 sons and a daughter with a young woman from the same tribe. The daughter, born in 1870, was named Banawi, and she was the youngest of them all. Yari poured his teachings into her, especially those related to black magic. According to his sister, by the time Banawi was just 15 years old, you could already feel a very heavy energy in her, very different even from that of her father. Perhaps because of that, sadly, She died young at the age of 23. And this event deeply affected Yari, and in his desperation, he sacrificed almost his entire family, except for the eldest son. There was no longer any way to hide his darkness, and he was finally expelled from the tribe. His son was left in the care of his aunt, Yari's sister. Yari disappeared into the depths of the jungle. His trail was lost, but then rumors began to spread. Animals started disappearing, and then people too. Screams were heard, wailing human sobs, and sounds of unknown beasts surrounding the village. No one wanted to go near that part of the forest. Meanwhile, Yari's eldest son left the tribe and became one of the first settlers of what would later become the Nameless Village. There, he had a daughter, Emilia, his only descendant. Shortly before dying, Yari returned. He came to deliver a warning that marked the entire family. The next woman born with my blood will inherit my powers. Her destiny will be to become a witch. Maybe it was luck, or maybe some kind of protection. But after Emilia, no more women were born into the family for many years, until far from the village, in the city of Bucaramanga, my cousin was born much later, in 1992, my room. I had to close my eyes and pretend they weren't there in order to sleep. In 2014, we moved to where I live now, a 3-story house in Chia. I stayed on the 3rd floor alone. My parents slept on the 2nd floor. At first, everything was calm. I thought I had gotten away from it, but it didn't take long for them to come back. Almost every night, I felt a breath near me. It hit my face every time I tried to sleep. The shadows returned. They appeared, then left. I had gotten used to it and stopped paying attention. Until 2018. One night I woke up and couldn't move. Sleep paralysis. I tried to get up and then I saw at the foot of the bed the figure of a man staring at me. He laughed, a laugh that I swear I heard inside my mind. "You're not going to run away this time," he said. The voice was deep. I felt nauseous, like I was going to vomit. The figure disappeared. I sat up screaming. My father came running in and found me crying. From that night on, sleeping became impossible. The manifestations intensified. It wasn't just me noticing them anymore. Other family members said the house was full of ghosts. Footsteps where there was no one. Knocking on the 3rd floor window. Noises in the empty kitchen at midnight. But the worst still kept happening to me. I would wake up unable to breathe. I felt hands choking me, moving me, pulling me out of bed. My physical condition reached a critical state. Since I was 5 years old, I had practiced martial arts and was a high-performance athlete. Inconsistencies. It must be taken into account that this story has been passed down through 5 generations. Almost 200 years have passed since it began. Many words and memories have been lost, but I truly hope that now all of this can finally be left in the past. Thank you, if you made it through all of this. Community. Before we move on to the next story, I want to remind you of something. One of the few negative things about the legends that are still told in towns and rural areas is that they sometimes lead, out of ignorance, to harm innocent animals. You have no idea how awful I feel that there are still cases of, for example, owls being harmed because people are afraid of them. When even, according to many beliefs that have been shared with us, they are animals of good luck, and it is good to have them nearby. If you believe in witches, these birds, it is said, keep them away. They say the best thing witches have done is to convince us to fear and harm the birds that drive them off. And well, I talk about all this because in the next story, we're going to talk about a bird. But you'll see, a different kind of bird. We continue with the next story. Take care of the animals. Take care of your surroundings. The rest is over. My name is Oscar. I am an agronomist. And what I'm about to tell you happened to me a few years ago in the mountains between Tapalpa and Chiquilistlan in Jalisco. Nothing serious, they said. Just a stomach infection. But while we waited for the test results, a young nurse who had grown up in the area approached us. "Were you in the mountains?" he asked. We said yes. "You didn't see a turkey, did you?" Right then I froze. I swear I froze. I asked him why he said that, and he stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said, "It's just, my grandfather used to say that in the mountains, something appears with the shape of a turkey. Big, strange, and that when you see it, something always happens, a sickness, a death, a bad visit. But the worst part," and this he said in a very soft voice, "the worst part is that animal, sometimes it isn't alone." I didn't know what to say. I just felt it. I didn't tell him what I had seen, but I knew that what his grandfather saw was the same thing I had seen. Carlos recovered, luckily. But on the last night we spent there, I went out to the bathroom, which was behind the house. It was early morning and I saw it again. There it was, standing there closer than the last time. And behind it I swear I saw someone. A tall man, very thin. He was dressed like the old farmers used to dress. And even though I couldn't see his face clearly, I felt like he was watching me. I felt like he knew me. When we returned to town, I asked discreetly about that figure. They showed me an old photo of someone named Eusebio. They called him the town madman, and apparently he talked to himself. He would disappear into the mountains for days and said he talked to animals. He had died many years ago. And yes, it was him. Without a doubt, it was him. I never went back to the mountains. I haven't worked in that region again since then. But sometimes when I have very bad luck, I dream of being back in that town. And even though I don't see anything, I know I'm not alone. Oh,